everyone, welcome to Historic Bratonsville. I'm Farmer Eli, and today we got a great program for you. Yes, ma'am.
Are those sheep real?
Well, they are quite real, and you know what? After the program, if you would like to pet them, come see me, and we'll let that happen. You can see how real they really are.
Oh boy!
Anyway, so we have a great program today. What it's entitled is From Field to Clothes, Sheep, It's What We Wear. And what we'll be discussing is the early Americans, the different steps they took to turn wool into clothes.
Hey, mister.
Yes, ma'am.
Do those sheep bite?
Well, they kind of nibble. They don't have top teeth, so we're not really worried about them biting. The one person we're worried about is that ram back there because he could butt you. So that's the one you want to keep your eye on.
Oh.
Anyway, before we get started, of course, our restrooms are located behind the visitor center. So if any of y'all have to go, feel free to just excuse yourself and you can catch back up with the program. But without further ado, let's go see that interesting task. Hey guys, come on in, come on in. You form a semicircle around here and, come on in. Well guys, welcome to the Weave House. Of course, we're in the barnyard and y'all saw our lovely sheep. And now we want to show you where the hard work is put into making clothes, from turning wool into clothes. And so, with our sheep, if you notice, they're real hairy. Now that wool continues to grow non-stop. It always grows. Do any of y'all get a haircut? And why do we get a haircut? You're right, because our hair keeps growing. Same thing as wool. This is some of the wool that we have just sheared off of our sheep. Now don't worry, we cut it just short enough so that we get the wool off but not hurt the sheep in any way. And we use a set of hand scissors, and what that does is that cuts that wool off and that gives us our product here to work with. Now the next step is, it's a little kind of nasty. You see all those different pieces of leaves and grass and stuff, and it is really yellow. So what we have to do is we have to clean that wool, because ultimately what we want to do is get our wool nice and clean like this. So the first step would be to wash the wool. Now what we do is we take a pot of water and we heat it up almost to a boil, so get it really nice and warm. And then we take this and we take lye soap. So lye soap is made with pig fat and ashes. I know it sounds gross, but just know, they utilized every part of the animal back then. They didn't waste anything because, they didn't really have much money, and they were very conscious on the animals that they raised. So they used everything. So we would use lye soap, and then we put it down there and we wash it. And what that washing process does is it gets all the imperfections out of there, all the lanolin. So the parents, anybody know what lanolin is? You're right. So skincare products. It's like a lotion. Wool has it on it because the sheep produce it to keep waterproof. And so we'll capture that with that hot water. The lanolin will rise up. But our main thing we want to do is get the nastiness off of it. Any kind of dirt and germs are on there. And at that point, once we dry it out, we get our wool. And if you notice, it's really pretty now. But, all these fibers are all in different directions, so there's no possible way to spin this into thread or yarn. So there's another step we have to do. When y'all wake up in the morning, is your hair all straight and perfect, or does your mom and dad make you brush your hair to get the craziness out of it? Exactly. So when we brush our hair, that puts all our hair in one direction. And that's what these do. These are called carding paddles. And you put that wool that we just washed in there, and you run them beside each other. And you're just going to run them beside each other. And you see right here? And what that's doing is that's getting all those fibers in one direction. So once all the fibers are in one direction, just like that brush did with your hair, now you're able to use this to spin yarn or spin thread. Now, let me ask you another question. Do any of y'all help your mom and dad around the house? You do? So you know how you do chores? What do? All right, you help take the trash out. Really good. And you help load up the dishwasher. That's really nice. So in early America, one of the chores for the kids was to cart wool. And they would sit around here because they wanted to cart wool, so therefore mom could spin or weave that into fabric, because we made pretty much all our clothes back then. So that would have been a job for one of y'all. Okay guys, so the next step is, once we have all of our wool in the right direction, we must spread those fibers out and twist them to a point where they stick together. So what we use is a spinning wheel, and what this does is this big wheel will turn this little little spool here, and the little spool, what it does is it's twisting these fibers all together, much like rope. So if you need to see rope before, how it twists it together, same process. So what we'll do is we'll get this thing started. What it's doing is it's slowly drawing it in. And as I pull this off, we're making thread. Pretty cool, isn't it? So once we get that thread, and you can see some of it now. So once we get that thread, now what we can do is two things. We can either use this thread to put on our loom. And so a loom, what it is, of course, it makes fabric so that we can sew our clothes up together. So the loom, all these fibers are running one direction, and then we use this crisscross pattern through all of these threads to form fabric. So that's one thing you can do with it. Another thing too is you can take two of them together and you can ply them together. And this may look really familiar to you. What do y'all think this is? Great job. So yarn. And if you look really close, when I was talking about how like it kind of looks like rope, if you look, it's twisted. And that gives it some more strength and some more body. So, you know, that's the two things that we can do once we spin it. Now what we do is either make fabric out of it or make yarn so we can knit things together. Let's talk about what you get from wool. So can y'all think of anything that you would have made of wool? Anybody? A winter hat. You're exactly right. So a couple of y'all have them on right now. So a winter hat, this would have been made with wool. This is the yarn. I actually left the tail on it so that way you can see that it was actually made with wool. And it's dyed with a product called cochineal, which is the butt of a beetle. Exactly. So a beetle butt gives you this nice pretty red color here. Can y'all think of anything else? What in the wintertime is your favorite thing to keep you warm? If your hands are really cold, what do you wear? You wear gloves, mittens. It's funny, so both of y'all said that. So of course we have gloves here and we have mittens. And they are both made from wool. And this will keep your hands really, really warm in the wintertime when you're out in the playground or at the park with your parents. So these are really, really good. If your feet are cold, what do you wear to keep your feet warm? Wool socks. You're exactly right. So these wool socks right here will keep you really, really warm. And if you notice, they're quite lovely. Can y'all think of anything else? If you go outside in a short sleeves in the middle of winter, are you going to be warm or are you going to be cold? You're going to be cold. What do you wear? A jacket. So if you look right here, this is a wool jacket. This jacket is made out of wool and it'll keep us nice and warm. So you're right. You know, early Americans, you know, we didn't necessarily have different types of things to put on our bed, but what we did have to keep us warm was a wool blanket, and this thing will keep you really, really warm. So that gives you some ideas of different things that we use with wool, like how do we manufacture these things. So we take that spinning wheel and then we make the yarn. We either make fabric to make our jackets and our blanket, or we use yarn to make mittens and winter gloves and stuff like that. So that's really, really important, and it was really important for early Americans because they didn't have stores like we have now. They had to do all this stuff, a lot of this stuff themselves. So it just shows you kind of the hard work that they had to put into just making the simple, basic things that we have nowadays that are real easy to get. Now, another thing what I love about wool too is, I ask you a question, does any of y'all parents recycle? So y'all do recycle y'all's goods, good stuff. And why do we recycle? Good job, Tommy, to keep things out of the landfill. The greatest part about wool is, this wool, if it gets tore or gets old, you actually can take it, bury a hole in your backyard, and you can put it back in that soil and it'll decompose and it'll add nutrients back to the soil and have no environmental impacts. So anything, even the littlest things that we can do now will make it better for our next generation if we can reduce that pollution in our world. If any of y'all have any further questions, feel free to stick around after the program and I'll be running around the barnyard happy to answer any of those questions. Now, I hope you really enjoy this program. You know, through hard work, Americans were able to turn wool into clothes. And so hopefully your takeaway from this is next time you put on your favorite winter hat, just remember, from field to clothes, sheep are what we wear. Thanks so much for visiting us today, and we look forward to seeing you again real soon.